have the Bargain Bead Box here. Now, of course, everyone who subscribes knows that this box was pretty late, so I don't know if it's actually the June or July box. I think it's the June box. But what I like to do with the Bargain Bead Box is I don't go through every single piece. I just start making things, and I will show you what I'm using, and lots of times I add things from my own collection. We've got some metal pieces here. We've got a great big connector, and we do have some head pins and some chandelier components and some charms, some huge ear wire thingies, and a lot of blues, a splash of red, and some whites. So, and a nice little lapis pendant here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the bead box in case you want to get one. This is the Bargain Bead Box. It is $17.95 a month. If you use the code GGC2, you will get $2 off your first subscription, your first box with your subscription. And you can go to bargainbeadbox.com to get one. So let's go ahead and let me look at what we've got here, and I will start making some pieces with you. So what I have decided to do is I'm going to use the crystals in the number 3 bag. This is a 30-piece 6mm English cut crystal round beads. So I'm going to use this color, and I actually found in my own stash these cheaper type of bicones that pretty much match the same color that is in this crystal. So I may be using those. Of course, if you don't have some that match exactly like mine, you can use whatever looks good with it. Maybe a white, maybe a different color blue, maybe a silver. It doesn't matter, or even just a round bead of some kind. Because I'll probably use that just on the top portion here. I'm making little loops with these crystals, so I'll show you how to make the loop. I am also putting the number 11 bag, the ship's helm charms, I'm putting them on to the ends here. So I'm going to start with that, because what you have to do is you have to remove the very center part of the little steering wheel thing here, right here. So what I'm doing, and they're on there pretty good, is I'm just grabbing a hold of it with my chain nose pliers and just giving it a good couple shakes back and forth. And they're on there pretty good, so it takes a little bit of work. And get that off. Just that middle one, and only on 2 of them. So you can see I connected this one with 2 jump rings. You have to use a rather large jump ring, so this is an 8mm jump ring to get it through the little charm, because the bottom of the charm is pretty thick, and then you have to slide it on to the focal. So it is, you have to use a bigger jump ring. So what I've done is I've gotten these 8mm jump rings, and you just open them from side to side. That one's already open. Let me open one for you. So I'm just holding on to it with my chain nose. The split of the jump ring is right here, and let me see if I can grab my flat nose, and I'm just going to twist it pretty far open. You want to open pretty big. And then I'm going to grab a hold of the focal, and I'm going to go through the charm. Now it might be better, yes, it's going to be better if we go through the charm first, because it's just a little harder to put it through the charm. I'm going to go on either side of this little divider piece here. So I'm going to put one on this side. I'm just going to get it on there the best I can, like this. And then I'm going to drop it on the focal. Make sure that it's facing the right direction. And then I'm just going to close the jump ring. And it's a little fidgety because it just is. See what I mean? But you can get it. You just have to close that jump ring. And then you can lay it out like this. And then we'll put another one on the other side of the divider, which is a little bit more fidgety. So I'm going to open this jump ring even more than I have it open. I'll open it pretty wide. You can see that I've opened that really wide. And then I'm going to grab the whole thing here, and I'm going to put it on this side of the divider this time. So you can see I have my jump ring in that side, I'm going in this side, and just kind of get it in there the best I can. Go into the chandelier component and then close my jump ring. And now I have two little charms on either side of the focal, just like that. So that turned out really cute. Now I want to put one in the middle too. So I am going to not take anything off this one. I'm going to put two jump rings and I'm going to center it on these three middle pieces here because this has an even number of loops, so we have to center it somehow. So what I'm going to do is, this is right in the center here. I am going to skip that one right in the center and go on either side of it and put a jump ring on this side and a jump ring on this side connecting to the helm charm. So this time I'm going to use 6mm round jump rings, and I'm going to open them really wide too. So I'm just going to grab one and I'm going to open it. And like I said, this is 6mm round, so it's a little bit smaller than these up here. I am going to just put it first in the component. So I want to go, this is the most center one, right underneath the center divider thing. I'm going to go to the left of it and put this on. And then drop my charm on. Make sure your charm is the proper direction. I just put it on backwards. So if you are holding it like this, you can see this front of the focal, put it on the right way, and then close your jump ring. Make sure you get it closed, because I didn't. Close it tight by just kind of shimmying it back and forth. And then this is what you should have so far. Now I'm going to put another jump ring on this loop on this side, so this is the right side, and I'm going to put another jump ring so that centers, pulls my little charm center. So I'm going to grab a 6mm jump ring and I'm going to open it. I'm going to, whoa, and I just threw a crystal on my lap. I'm going to open it really wide, and then I am going to again go to my focal, go one over from the center one on the right side here. Of course, I've got it turned so you can't tell what side, but, and then I'm going to put it on the loop here of my charm. It might be better if I did it the other way around. Yeah, let's try it the other way around. So let me grab the charm, and then I will go up through this loop right here. Come on, come through. I promise this works because I tried it before I showed you. Of course, it worked a lot better then. So let me try it one more time. Let me open a different one. Maybe I just have that one all strange. I grab one of these I already have open and try it again. So I'm going to go through this one, skip over one, go into the loop here, come here, you. Okay, I know this works, guys. I do. There it is. Right there. And then I'm going to close it as tight as I can. I'll close it a little better than that. I've got it kind of squished because I squished it. Alright, there. Now let's see what it looks like. So, that, I hope I was in camera. All I was doing was trying to put the loop through this one. So, hopefully I was in camera and you could see what I was doing. But when I'm working with jump rings and pliers and all that, I usually get out of camera. Otherwise, We'll see. If I need to, I'll redo it. But now what I'm going to do is make loops, and I'm going to go like every other one with these little components I'm going to make and use the small jump ring. So I'll probably use like a 3mm, 4mm round jump ring like this and attach on every other loop and see how I get it. I mean, I may have to count and just figure out what my even number is going to be here for them. But I'm just going to kind of space them out like this so that they don't touch each other. So maybe every other loop and connect them. But let me show you how to make one of these loops real quick. So you've got some head pins in the number 5 bag here. Let me back off. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab one of them. They're kind of bent up, so just straighten it out a little bit. Put one of your crystals on it, like this, and then get your round nose pliers. We're just going to make a really small wrap loop. We don't want it to have a great big round top or loop here, because then it will just look kind of awkward. So we're going to bring the camera here, and what I'm going to do is, after I've slid my crystal on, I'm just going to place the smallest part of my pliers just a little bit down on that wire right on top of the bead, and I'm going to bend that wire over the top of the back part of my plier. So I'm holding it like this, just bend it over. Then I'm going to turn my wrist and put my plier into that bend, keeping it towards the front of my plier where it's the smallest, so I get a small loop. Then I'm going to bring this wire over the top, and as I do that, I can just turn my wrist forward a little bit, bring this one down underneath, and this is what I have. It's a little loop. So just bring it around your pliers. And then I can grab onto that loop with my chain nose pliers, just like this. I'm just going to switch my hands, and I'm going to put this wire parallel to the pliers, and then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to start turning, and I just want like 3 tight turns, nice and neat on top of each other as I turn, just like that, because I don't want this to have a whole lot of space between the loop and the bead. So 3 nice tight turns, cut this wire down very close to my wrap, just like that. Grab my chain nose pliers and tuck in that tail nice and neat. Just like that. Then I can straighten out my loop, and I've got a nice little dangle. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of these. 30 of them came in the package. I will tell you exactly how many I need and exactly how far I'm going to space them. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these little 3mm jump rings, and I'm going to open them just like I've been opening the others. Just place my flat nose on one side of the opening and my chain nose on the other side and turn it open. Then I'm going to put it on a dangle, and I'm going to start with the very last loop here. I'm going to put it in this loop. See if I can get it in here nice and neat. And then I'm just going to close that jump ring. And that is how we're going to put those on. Now I'm going to figure out exactly how many I want to put on here and where I want to put them, and I'll come back and show you exactly what I did, but that is the process. You can use any of the beads you want to use. If you don't want to use these, then you could use like the big white ones, but you'd have to space them further apart. So on this, I'm going to try to do it every other one so that these are pretty tight together, because I think they'll look really pretty close together. But we're going to see. It may not work out, it may. And then I may come back and string something for the top with some of these, or maybe I'll just attach some chain. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do it yet. I want to keep this fairly simple and clean because I think it'll look really pretty the simpler I keep it. If I get too complicated with it, it's just going to be a little crazy looking. So anyway, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so this is what I ended up doing with the little loops on the component. I used 12. So I just went every other loop and it worked out just fine all the way to the middle, and it looks pretty cute. So just connect the little looped beads just like I did with the jump ring, a small jump ring, and you'll need 12 of them. And then I had a bunch of them left because there was 30 on the strand. So what I did was I got out some head pins from my own stash. Now, of course, you can use the eye pins that came if you want, but they're pretty weak to use. But you could cut the end off and make a loop on either side if you don't have eye pins. But what I've done is I've just gotten out some eye pins, and I used my one-step looper to make a loop. I will also show you how to make a loop without it. But this is a small 1.5 one-step looper, and what I've done is I've put on one of the beads on a head pin, and then you just put it into your one-step looper. You have a little like peg. Let's see. There's a little peg right here, and there's a little hole on this side. So what you do is you just slide it in to the hole underneath the peg, hold it steady, and make sure you're not really close to the bead or it won't make a very good loop. But you want to place it right about here and then just squeeze and then kind of bend it back a little so you get the proper shape, and then you can take it off. They are open, so most of your loops will be open. That's the way that it's done on the looper. And then I just close my loop like this. I got my one-step looper on Amazon. I just put in one-step looper or jewelry making tools, or you can find, just do a search and you can find these one-step loopers. You can probably find them on some of the bigger bead supply places also that offer tools. So that's that loop there. Then if you want to make your own, just put it on the head pin just like you did. This is a long one, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it right over the top of the bead, and I'm going to cut it down about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to place it right at the very end of that piece of wire. And I'm just going to make a loop. So I'm going to go as far as I can, reposition my hand, and then just continue rolling it over. So there's my loop. Now if you want to, you can make your loops the same because they're kind of turned by grabbing your flat nose and chain nose, or 2 chain nose, whatever, and just turn the loops the same like this. And then you have your own loop. Now if you want to use these eye pins, or these head pins that came in the package, you can place, first just cut the end off. Let me do this right here. Cut the end off, and then grab your chain nose or flat nose, whatever you have, and just bend it about 1/4 of an inch down like this. So you have this little L shape. Put that over your finger. Go to the very end. That might be a little bit long for the loops I'm making, so I'll just cut it a little shorter. Put your chain nose towards the end of the chain nose pliers so it's a small loop, and then put it at the very end of the wire, holding it like an L on your finger, and just turn as far as you can, and then reposition your wrist by rolling it forward, and then just continue rolling. And now you have an eye pin. And then you can put your bead on that eye pin. And this wire is actually working okay for this, so it's not too thin. And then just bend this end over the top of your bead. Cut it down about 1/4 of an inch. And now you have another L shape with a bead on it. Place it over your finger. Go towards the end of your plier, and then go as far as you can, and then reposition your wrist by just moving it forward and continue roll. Now I have loops on either side, and I can straighten them out. And now I have a looped bead. Now I've made a whole bunch of them, as you can see, and I've laid them out. I've gotten out some of my jump rings that are 8mm, and what I'm going to do, and a couple of 3mm. What I'm going to do, let me get you a little closer in here, is I'm going to start connecting these on either side of the helm charms with a small jump ring first. So I'm just going to open this 3mm jump ring, make sure it can accommodate both of these loops, and I think it should be fine. This actually might be a 4mm jump ring. I think it is, actually. So I've opened this jump ring, and then I'm just going to grab one of the loops I made, put it on the loop, and then put it on, whoops, and I dropped it. Put it on the loop, put it on the end of the charm, and then close the jump ring. Lay this out. I'm going to move these. And I'm just going to connect my next one with a larger jump ring. So this is what I have so far. I'm going to grab one of these larger jump rings, and I'll just count out, make sure that I connect the same amount on either side. I'm going to grab this 8mm and see how this works out, because I want more length, so I'm using a bigger jump ring. You can use smaller ones if you want, but we don't have a ton of beads, and we need to get at least 18-inch necklace, including the length here. So 18, 16 if you're really small, but I'm going to try, and we can always add some chain to the back if we need to too. So I've opened this jump ring, put on another one of my charm or my looped beads, and then I'm just going to close this jump ring right here. Oops, actually close it, Gina. I tell you. Let's get this closed. So you can hear it snap when it closes, and then you just kind of shimmy it back and forth. Make sure that it's nice and closed, and the shimmying effect kind of hardens the wire so that it stays in place better. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to just continue putting on the 8mm loops and the looped beads until I have the same length on either side, and I'll be back. Okay, so now you can see that I've connected 9 crystal looped components with the 8mm jump rings all the way up, and then my clasping. So what I did on the end here was I went down to a 6mm jump ring, and I put 3 of them on the end to give myself a little bit more length here, simply because it wasn't quite long enough. This is going to be right around 18-inch necklace. So I have added 3 6mm jump rings and then a 3mm just to kind of reduce the size, and then I will put my clasping on. So basically I just connected everything all the way up to the end, and then on this side, and I have 1 looped crystal left. It was one little oddball here, but I'm not going to use him for this because it'll just make everything off. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to connect the end of my chain here so you can see what I did. I just opened a jump ring, dropped another jump ring on it. So these are my 6mm jump rings, and I'm just going to put it onto this end loop, close this jump ring, and make sure it's actually closed. Sometimes it's hard to see if they're closed. So. Okay, then I'm going to make sure this one that I dropped on is closed nice and tightly. So now I have 2 little jump rings on there, and then I'm going to open another one. Put it on, close it tight. Whoops. And then I'm going to pick up a 4mm jump ring, open it, put my clasp on it, put my other loop on it, and then close it. Of course, you know, you could just put the little jump ring on the toggle end and then open up the bigger jump ring and slide it on there. Be a little easier because you slip on the smaller ones, but doesn't matter as long as it gets on there. Okay, so there is my end right there. So I just reduced down to 6mm jump rings, put 3 of them onto the loop, and then put a 4mm jump ring, and then put on my toggle end. And let me get my piece out here, and I can show you what it looks like. It turned out pretty cute, actually, I think. Put this together, and dangles don't do too well laying down flat, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, so that's piece number 1. I think it turned out pretty cute. Let me decide what I want to do next, and I'll be back. Okay, so now I have decided that I'm just going to make a simply strung project with the number 16 lapis pendant, the number 2 lapis beads, the number 12 spacer beads, and the number 17 bead caps. And I've added some soft flex medium beading wire, and I've cut about 22 inches just to make sure I have enough to work with. Some size 2 bead-along crimp tubes, and probably the clasps that came in the package also, the number 8. And as I get going, I may change things around a little bit, but basically I just want to make a really simply strung necklace. Okay, so I've put all my stuff out, and looking at it, I probably don't have enough to make a full strand. So I may add chain to the end, which would mean that I would need less of my wire, but I already cut it. Then I also found in my stash some 4mm spacer beads. You can use anything you want as a spacer bead. You could use a pearl, you could use whatever you have, a little rondelle crystal or whatever, to also string to make more room. The first thing I thought I would do is I think I'm going to start from the center, and I'm just going to put on my, let me get some of this stuff out of my way. I'm going to put on my pendant first. I'm just going to slide it down to the center of my wire, and I'm going to string from the center out so that I can not have to lay out a design. So I'll just put it on the center. You don't have to perfectly center it at this point because it's just going to move around. And I think I'm going to start with a bead cap because these bead caps graduate in. They're going to be a perfect way for this pendant to lay nicely on the wire, and kind of give it a little bit of spacing so that it moves okay, and I won't have to put seed beads or anything there, I think. So let's see how this is going to work. So I'm going to put one on either side with the large ends out, of course, and see how that works. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is see if this will fit. I'm going to put one of these little spacer beads that came in the box in between. See if this pendant will sit on top of it. No, maybe not. So, let me see. Maybe I might need a couple seed beads. Let me see. It might work just fine. I'm going to try it without it. So I'm just going to put the 2 bead caps right there, just like that. And then I'm going to grab a lapis bead. And another bead cap. And that, you know, these bead caps are kind of big for these beads, so it's going to show just a little bit of the bead. I may, now let's see, maybe it'll look okay. And just try it and see what happens. Because it covers up a lot of my bead here. It actually doesn't look too bad, even though it does cover a lot of my bead up. Let me get you close. Doesn't look too horrible. And this should slide around on here pretty good. Should be okay. Let me recenter my wire. And then maybe I will, what do I want? I don't know what I want. Maybe I'll put one of these on, see what that looks like. And there's not a million of these bead caps either, so I'm going to have to figure out exactly what I want to do. That's really not too bad looking, though. It actually looks kind of good. So I'm going to continue just, I think maybe on either side of this I'm going to put a spacer bead, just so it moves on the wire better, because this is really square and this is really narrow, so it doesn't really move correctly. So I'll either do that, or you could use one of these little tiny beads in the 20 package too. I may get those out, but I think that those go really well with these beads, with the darkness of the dragon vein agate here. So I was kind of holding that aside to go together. But I can find a rondelle in my stash that works really well. I have these rondelles that I might use that work really good. So I'm going to try this first and see what happens. If I put on one of my 4mm spacing beads, then I put on one of these. This is going to give me more room too, so that I take up more room on my beading thread and have to use less caps and, whoops. Okay, get back there. So let me grab this one, see what happens. I like the silver and the lapis look together. I don't really want to put a bunch of other stuff in there if I don't have to, because I think silver and lapis are pretty together. But I don't want it to be a dumb looking necklace either, so let me see. I want to make these things very simple in appearance so that they wear very nicely casually every day. So maybe that's what I'll do. Okay, so I was out of camera. Sorry. I'm just dropping two 4mm spacing beads on either side of this spacer bead, and then putting the caps and the lapis in between, and it kind of has a good appearance. I may just go ahead and drop a lapis bead without a bead cap on top of this bead cap here, and then put the bead cap on backwards like this, so that I can see my actual whole piece of lapis too. So I can do that. I can cover some of them, and I can open up some of them so you can actually see it like that. And then I can do this again, put on one of these, and put on one of these, and then do my spacing with my beads again. So my 4mm, and then this one, and then this one, and I'm just going to continue stringing until I decide that either I run out of beads, or I decide it's long enough I can put on some chain or something. So I'm going to continue stringing just like this, and I'll come back and show you what I've got and what I've decided to do with the length of my beading thread, just to get me to a good length of necklace. I'll be back in a minute. So this is what I've come up with. I had to get kind of creative and spread the beads out more with the lapis and my spacer beads, because I only had a limited amount of caps. So instead of just having caps around the beads and just putting a little spacer in between, I went ahead, and I'll get you close so you can see the order I did this in. I'll zoom in on one side more than the other so that you can see. And this is what I did, is I put the little spacer bead, the number 12 bead, and then the spacer bead, the caps, and a lapis in the cap. And then here I just started putting lapis, spacer bead, lapis, spacer bead, lapis, and then a cap with the lapis, and then again the spacer bead and the little metal bead that comes in between, or that comes in the package, excuse me. Then I put 6 of my lapis beads with spacer bead in between, a cap, again the series of spacers here, and then I did 4 with the cap on either side, and then I did, to give me some more length, I just did those little number 12 metal beads, and I think it was number 12, but anyway, and the spacers in between just to give me some length. So what it ended up, and it looks pretty good, let me see if I can get this in here, so you can see it, it ended up to be about 18 inches. Once I put on my clasping, it'll be about 19 inches. So maybe even a little longer than that. But that's gotten enough length for me to actually have a necklace that will fit. And it looks really good. I mean, the silver and the lapis look nice together. So now I have put one end on, and you will put both ends on exactly the same way. So I'm just going to show you how to put one end on, and then of course you can do the other. Now, if you haven't got one already done, then you just put a little clip or something on one side. Just clip it off like this so that things don't move around. Then you can clasp one side, and then take that clip off. Make sure everything's pulled tight because of the way that we put the pendant here. We don't want to leave a lot of slack in the line. We don't want to leave any slack in the line. And because this is soft flex wire I'm using, it'll bend and stretch a little bit. It's really flexible, so I don't have to worry about that too much. I am now going to pick up my size 2 crimp bead and drop it down. And I'm going to get you in close here so you can see. Pardon my fingernails, I haven't had a chance to get them done, so I'm sorry, but it is what it is. And then I'm going to drop on this clasp here. So I've got my crimp bead and my clasp on here, then I'm going to go back through my crimp bead, and I'm going to go through the first bead on my piece too. Just because it's a wide bead, I can get through well, and it'll hide the little pokey end. So then I want to compare, since I already have one end down, I kind of want to compare the sizes of the loops here. It's a little bit bigger on that side. So I have basic sizes around my clasp the same on both sides. So I want to make this one about the same size as that one, and that looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit bigger on this one. Not that big. Right about there. Then I'm going to take this wire, make sure that inside my crimp bead, my wires are parallel to each other, not crossing each other, and get you really close this time. And then I'm going to grab my regular size crimping tool, and in this divot closest to the handle, you can see when I close it, it's kind of crinkly on one side and a half circle on the other side. I'm going to put that right on that crimp tube. First, I'm going to make sure I have no slack in my necklace. Put that right on that crimp tube. I made my thing too big. Okay, and then I'm going to center the crimp bead on there and squeeze. And now I have a nice crimp where both of my wires are separated and in little tubes, and that's why you have them parallel instead of crossed, so that they lay in your crimp tube correctly. And then you're going to use the first divot on your crimping tool. This one, that when you put your tool together, it's a full circle and it's towards the tip of the handle. You're going to place this crimp tube in here sideways so that the two tubes that you formed are touching the sides of the tool here. And then you're going to squeeze them together. And that is a proper crimp. Then I'm just going to grab my end cutters and I'm going to get as close as I can and trim that wire off. Let it kind of fall down into the beads here. And there's my clasping. And I'll show you my necklace. And I think it turned out really pretty. So let's get it close so you can see. And let me turn it this way since you'll be able to see it better. That's what that looks like. It turned out really nice, and my clasping will work just fine. And that is a little gemstone necklace. Okay, so now I'm going to use the, they're calling these 8mm crackle agate round beads. So I'm going to use this, and that's the number 15, I believe. And then the rondelles, I'm going to use them. And I'm going to use, I've added from my own stash some 8/0 seed beads, some 11/0 seed beads. These are Toho, and they are the nickel plate. I'll probably use some of the chain, and I'm going to use this little compass weird thing. So, see if I can do a little project that's bead weaving with this. So I'm going to use some 8-pound fire line. This is a heavier weight, and it's dark so that you won't see it, and it will be strong enough to hold onto these gemstone beads because they're kind of big and heavy. So I'm using a size 10 English beading needle, and I've put about a wingspan of thread onto my beading needle, which is when you put your arms out from side to side, like you're going to fly away. Measure from your fingertips the length of the first arm across your chest, the length of the second arm to your fingertips. That's a wingspan. That's probably more than we're going to need, but I want to make sure because I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and open up these beads, take them off the strands, and I'll be right back and show you what we're going to do. Okay, so after you've threaded your needle, then we're going to start a little weave here. And I don't think I am going to use this goofy little compass on this. I started making a design, playing with it, and I don't think this is what I want to do. I'll use this for something else. But just so you, I know everyone's going to say, what'd you do with that thing? So I'll do a couple of things with that, or I'll do something with that. But right now, we're just going to do a weave. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up onto our needle an 8/0, a rondelle, an 8/0, and then a big agate bead. And then we're going to pick up an 8/0, a rondelle, oops, come here, and an 8/0, and a big agate bead. Come here. So this is what we have. Let me get you closer and get some of this stuff out of my way. And this is what we have. We have an 8/0, rondelle, 8/0, agate, 8/0, rondelle, 8/0, agate. And we're going to bring this to the end of the thread. Now, I'm not using a full wingspan. You will go ahead and put one on, but just so you don't have to watch me pull it through a ton. I'm going to leave enough tail to put a clasping on the end, or to extend so I can put clasping on the end. So leave yourself about 8 to 10 inches to put your clasping on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back through the first 3 beads we put on. So just from our tail side, we're going to go back up the 8/0, the rondelle, and the 8/0. And hold on to those beads, hold on to your tail thread, pull your working thread through until you get something that looks like this. And then sew back through it, because we want to make sure that this is really strong and stable. And with the big beads like this, it's just not. So just sew through it. And it's going to get all out of shape. Don't worry about that. We'll pull it back into shape once we get around. Okay, so I'm going to sew through this one more time. These 3 beads here. Pull on my tail. And then back through all of them, just because this is really unstable and I want to get a particular shape here. So I'm just going to keep working until I get the shape I want, the tension I want, and the strength I want. Okay, so now I'm going to go through these 3 beads, and I'll have gone around it twice, and it will be, with my tension pulling on either side, it should be nice and neat like this. Then 8-0, and then crystal, and then 8-0 on your needle, just like this. You're coming out of this side of this 8-0. We're going to go into this side of this 8-0, and we're going to pull this down. Then we're going to go back up through these 3 beads, pull, and go back down through these 3, just to secure that, because it's our joint or connection and it needs to be nice and strong. Now, this is what you should have, and I'm going to go back up through these 3 beads so I can proceed forward with the length here. Now I'm going to change my unit a little bit. We're going to go back and forth from units that look like this to units that are kind of square around a bead. So what you have to do now is you have to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, and then you're going to pick up an 8-0 seed bead, and then, or actually, I'm sorry, an 11-0 and a rondelle, and then you're going to pick up an 8-0, and then you're going to pick up an agate and drop those down. So we've got 11-0, rondelle, 8-0, and agate. Excuse me. Then we're going to pick up an 8-0, a rondelle, and an 11-0. And we're going to go back into the opposite side of the 3 beads we're coming out of. So just go through all 3 of these beads right here and pull this all down like this. And this is what you should have. Now we're going to sew back through this twice also, just because that's why you need a whole, I've decided that you do need a full wingspan, because without sewing through this, you're not going to have a real nice shape. So sew through them, go back up through these 3, sew through this one, and then make sure your tension is good, everything looks good. If you need to, sew through one more time. I'm going to go through this agate here, and I'm going to make the other half. This is going to make kind of a square around my bead. So now I'm going to pick up an 8-0, and I'm going to pick up, this side is a little bit different, so I'm going to pick up an 8-0, I'm going to pick up a rondelle, and then I'm going to pick up an 11-0, and then I'm going to pick up an 8-0, and a rondelle, an 8-0, an 11-0, a rondelle, and an 8-0, and I will show you. Don't worry too much about it. So this is what I have. I have an 8-0, a rondelle, an 11-0, an 8-0, a rondelle, an 8-0, an 11-0, a rondelle, and an 8-0, just like that. I'm going to bring this down and go back into the other side of the agate, just like this, the opposite side from which I'm coming out. Pull this down, and then I'm going to sew through these 3 beads here first, just to kind of get my shape. Then I'm going to sew up through these 3 here, then I'm going to sew up through these 3. Now you can do it, you know, you don't have to do it in sections of 3, but it kind of helps get your shape going. Now I'm going to go back down through my agate, go through the 8-0, the rondelle, and the 11-0 here, and then I'm going to go up through the 8-0, rondelle, 8-0, and I am just going to pick up an 8-0, a rondelle, and an 8-0. And I'm going to go back into the 8-0 on the opposite side of these 3 beads, right here. And I'm going to pull this up like this. And then I'm going to sew back through it. So just go back down through these 3, go back up through these 3, and then just to establish my shape better, I'm going to sew back through this again, just because this needs the strength and it needs the shape. So I'm going to go through these beads here, So I'm not adding anything, I'm just giving it a little bit more structure. And just through the agate, see, I don't want to pull that 8/0 over, so just through the agate here, and then I'm going to go up through these 3 beads here. And it kind of forces it into a better shape here. Then up through these 3 beads, right there. Then back down through these 3. Just watch this a couple times. It's not hard. It's just, you just have to get the hang of what we're doing here. And now we're going to pick up, we're going to do this section again. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pick up a agate, and then we're going to pick up a 8/0, a rondelle, an 8/0, and an agate, just like this. And then we're going to drop them down. Go through the 3 beads here and pull them up. Now we're just going to sew back through all these beads. Section at a time, just so you can make sure that you retain the shape that you want. Then I'm going to go back around. You can go through it one more time completely if you'd like. And this is the shape that we're getting. So let's make one more unit like this, and then we'll just continue doing this unit, and then this unit, and then this unit, and then this unit, and we'll just continue alternating making the units. And if you need to, you can just back up the video and watch the first few so that you can make each unit until you get the hang of it. So now we need to pick up an 11/0, an agate, or I'm sorry, an 11/0, and then a rondelle, and then an 8/0, and then an agate. Then we're going to pick up an 8/0, a rondelle, an 11/0, and we're going to go back up through, oops, you know what, I messed up. So what we have to do after each, I'm sorry, I'm designing as I do this, and I'm very sorry about that. But what we have to do after we go through each one is we have to make another unit of the ladder stitch here on the side. So we need to pick up an 8/0, a rondelle, and an 8/0. And I'm sorry if it's confusing. Like I said, I'm designing. I don't have a bunch of beads in these boxes to make a design, perfect it, and then show it to you. So I'm just winging it. So now I'm going to go back through these 3 here. Might actually be better if we didn't put a double here, but that's okay. It's going to give us more length. So now I've sewn through those 3 beads and reinforced them. And now I will start this unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an 11/0, and then I will pick up a rondelle, and then I will pick up a 8/0, an agate, drop it down. Then I will pick up a 8/0, rondelle, 11/0, and you can look back at your previous units. That's what I'm doing, because you're not going to remember until you get several units down, then you'll remember. Okay, so that's what I've got. Now I'm going to sew back through. Missed one. So I'm trying to just do 3 beads at a time here to retain my shape. just sewing around the beads. Then I'm going to go up through the agate, and then this is where I have to pick up the little bit longer one. But you can look at your beads, the previous unit here. We know what's coming out at the top here, so we're going to pick up an 8/0. And then we have a rondelle, and then we have an 11/0, and then it goes down into an 8/0. So we'll pick up an 8/0, a rondelle, an 8/0, drop that down. Then we just need to pick up the continuing part here, so that goes around the top of the bead. So now we will pick up a 11/0, and then we will pick up a rondelle, and we will pick up an 8/0. So let me show you exactly what I've got here. So when we're coming back around, we're making our ladder stitch connection, and we're making the extension on the top to the beads. So we have to have an 8/0, a rondelle, an 11/0, an 8/0, a rondelle, an 8/0, an 11/0, a rondelle, and an 8/0. Then we go back up through. Just like that. And this would be really pretty just, you know, doing this stitch. You won't have to do this stitch too if you don't want to. You can modify this in lots of ways. And I'm sure someone will, and make a video out of it too. So there you have it. Let's go back up this way and this way, and then sew back all the way around. Missed my third bead in that section there. And now I will sew through these 3 beads here, and then pick up 3 beads. So I'll pick up an 8/0, a rondelle, and an 8/0. And I'm going to go back into the 3 beads here, and secure them. Now you know how to do each unit. You will alternate the units with the 2 agates and then make the square around the 1 agate. If you need to, back up the video and watch it again so that you can do the units until you get the hang of them. So I'm going to continue just alternating my units and making this until I run out of beads, because I don't have that many beads. We may have to do something on the ends to extend it so we have enough length, but that's what we have so far. So just continue doing that, and I'll be back when I have the length. Okay, so I have made my bracelet, and I think it's about 6 inches long. It's about 1 inch short of going around my wrist completely. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 units here. And now I'm going to go ahead and put a clasping on the end, figure out some way to get this on here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up probably 3 11/0s, I think, and a crystal, and see what this does, how long that makes that. I think that's about right. And then I'm going to pick up another 11/0. So 3 11/0s, a rondelle, and 11/0, and then I'm going to go through my clasp. I want this to be long on this side so it goes through my clasp well. So now I will go back through the 11/0. Actually, I'm going to put an 8/0 on top of there. Like I said, I'm designing, so, you know, just bear with me. I think instead of putting an 11/0, I'll put an 8/0. That way I can do more passes of thread through it. And I'm getting short on thread. You will need to, even if you used a a wingspan, you'll probably need to put more thread on to complete this project because you have to sew through it so much. And let me get this 11-0 off, and I'll be right back. So now I'm going to pick up an 8-0, go through this clasp, go through the 8-0 in the crystal like this, and I'm just going to hold on to those and pull my thread through, and then I'm going to pick up 3 11-0s. And this is okay design. It's probably not my favorite, but it'll work. And it's kind of pretty. I laid it around the wrist. It is pretty on the wrist, but this is what this should look like. Now, I've come through the crystal, picked up 3 more 11-0s, came back through my 3 beads here, and now I'll sew up through this again, probably twice, just to make sure I have plenty of thread through this clasp and plenty of strength to withstand people tugging on it. Back through these 3, and then back up one more time. Go through my clasp. And through these 3 here. So I'm just sewing back through it. I know I'm not showing you very detailed, but I'm just sewing back through the clasp, just to make sure that it's strong. Now I've got 3 passes of thread through there. Right between these 2 units of beads here, there's a little thread bridge right here. I'm coming out of these beads, I'm going under that thread bridge, making a loop, and tying a knot. And then I'm going to go back through these here and do the same thing again. Go under the thread bridge, make a loop. My thread is getting really short here, and I'm around my clasp. So let me fix that. Okay, and then go through that loop, pull a knot down. Then I'll go through that set of beads, and then through this bead, and then these 3. I'm just sewing so I can get to where I can put another knot right here under the thread bridge, make a loop, go through it, tie a knot, and I think I'll just sew here, and then maybe back through here. Well, it's getting a little lumpy, so I'll go this way. Through here. Up through this bead. And I will cut off my thread. Those are really dull. These probably are too. I have a sharp pair somewhere around here, but... So now, I have tied off. I hope I was in camera. If I wasn't, I apologize. I just sewed through tying knots on thread bridges, and then when I ran out of thread and couldn't do any more, I just cut it off, and this is what this end looks like. Now, we've reserved thread on this side, and you can always add more if you didn't get enough, but I think I have enough. My tail isn't tremendously long, but I think I have enough. So I am going to put my needle on this side, and I am going to add another unit of the little 3 beads here, and then just put my clasping on this side exactly like I did on the other side, sew through and tie off. So let me show you what I mean. I may need a little more thread. I may have to extend that, but I'm going to pick up an 8-0 and a crystal and an 8-0. Drop this down because I only have 1 unit on this side. I'm just going to go ahead and go back through the opposite side from which I'm coming out. Bring those up and sew around them again. Like I said, I may have to extend, which is fine. I just want to get it to where you can see what we need to do. Now that I have these 3 beads here, I can go ahead and pick up my 3 11-0s, my crystal and my 8-0, and sew on the other end of my clasping exactly like I did this one. Go through and tie it off, and then I'll come back and show you the end product. I'm going to go ahead and extend because I don't think I'm going to have enough thread. So I'll extend, and I will leave or you can look at my playlist. There are videos in my playlist. I think it's beading tips and basics or something like that. There's a video in there called threading a beading needle and adding thread to a project. Go ahead and watch that. It'll show you how to extend your fire line. I'll probably leave a link, but sometimes I forget. But look and see if I've left a link in the description box beneath the video player for that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and here's the finished product. I think it's pretty. It's a good design. It's just kind of dark, but it's okay. I'm going to put this on so you can see. I made it just a little too long because of my addition on the clasping part, just a little too long for me. It's not terrible, but this is what it looks like. It's pretty. It's a good design. It's just, like I said, it's a little dark, but that's okay because it is what it is. But there's that design right there. And we'll do a couple more things and call it good. I'm going to try something with this chandelier component and the little compass thing and the helm charm. And I'm going to use some jump rings and some other beads, and I haven't decided exactly how I want to do this yet. I may make this a keychain too, so I've got out a split ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an 8mm jump ring and I'm going to open it. I'm going to grab my little compass and I'm going to go through the loop on the top here. And then I'm going to go through the loop on the component, the very top loop. And I'm just going to balance it on my bead mat so I can grab the 2 ends here and close this. And let's see if I can get it closed tight because it doesn't seem to be happening. There we go. Now, I have this little dangle. Now, I was thinking of trying to connect it down here or glue it on or something, but I think when it dangles, it'll do weird things. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a small something to dangle off of this, probably a little bit bigger than this rondelle. I'm going to find something to put it on one of our head pins and dangle it and weigh this little thing down, and then I can put this one on with a jump ring. So let me see. Let me find something that I want to use here real quick. Okay, so I've got an agate bead. I've used one of the head pins here, and I'm going to wire it to the compass here. So I'm going to just open this up like this. I should have done it before I put it on there, but it's a pain in the butt to get it on there, so I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, place it right on top of the bead, bend the wire over the top of the bead, turn my pliers up and down into the bend that I've just created. Let me get you a little closer. Bring this wire over the top like this, and I'm going to bring my wire underneath my pliers and turn the loop that I'm creating a little bit with my wrist so that I have a loop that looks like this. And then I'm going to grab my flat nose pliers and I'm going to open this loop. I'm going to put this on the compass, and then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and I'm going to hold on to this loop right here. So I'm holding on to it. It's just slipped over that little loop on the compass. I'm going to move this wire up a little bit so it's parallel with my pliers. I think I'm just going to use my round nose pliers here, and I'm just going to start wrapping this extra part of the head pin around the wire and close my wrap here. Now I can cut this off really close to my wrap. And then I'm just going to tuck this in, making sure that there's no sharp things hanging out here. And then I can drop this back down like this. Now this is going to weigh down the compass so it hangs correctly. Now I can just move this again this way. You don't want it to get all tangled up because then it's going to be hard for you to get it back in the proper positions. Then I think I'm going to, let's see how far this dangles. Not very far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a big jump ring and a small jump ring, I think. So how am I going to do this? Yeah, because I can hang other things off of this too if I want to. Do I? No, maybe I just want 2 smaller jump rings. That's what I want. So I've got 2 6mm jump rings right here. This one's already open. I'm going to go in the very middle loop here, and I'm going to close this jump ring. Close you. Close. Okay. I think I had that opened kind of awkwardly. Ah! Yeah, I love when I do that. But, let's see. Let's see if I can get this closed better. Alright, then I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to put it on. See, I might have to do 3 because I might have it hanging the wrong way now. So, let me see if it dangles. We're going to find out. Sometimes, no, it's right. Okay. So, now, these are double-sided, so that's okay. No matter how you hang it, it's going to be okay. So now I've got this, like this, and now I can just make some dangles to put on the other part. I'm going to take a decent-sized jump ring, maybe an 8mm jump ring. That one's too big, so let's try this one. Take a jump ring, and I'm going to put it in this loop, and I'm going to put it around the split ring so I don't have to run it through it. Like this. And you can do that at the end too. You don't have to do that now. And now I am just going to start dangling things from here. So probably just make, I think I'll just make loops on these agates that I have left. And because I don't really have, but you could use these white beads too. Or these ones are really tiny. And these big pottery beads, I don't know. I mean, we could use some bead caps on them, but the ends are kind of ugly. But you could put a bead cap on, hang it on there, but that's kind of big. So I think I'm going to stick with the agates, and I'm just going to put a couple of jump rings on them after I make a wrap. So what I'm going to do, and you can always, you can use an eye pin or a head pin depending upon how long you want them to be. Maybe I want to dangle something from the bottom too. Let me see, what do I want to do? Maybe I want to, yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of head pins, wrap some loops, and then I can put something in the bottom. But what? Maybe I'll just put, maybe I'll just get a head pin. Let me see. I want a head pin. Where did you go? Alright, so let me find what I'm doing here. I'll be right back. Okay, not only did I find my head pins, I decided what I wanted to do. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I just made a dangle for this side with a nugget on the bottom and then just some of the couple rondelles here. And I'm connecting them with really tiny little jump rings, probably 3mm jump rings. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to make this dangle right here. So first pick out one of your agate beads, slide it on a head pin, and we're going to make a wrapped loop. So just like we've been doing, slide it on, put your round nose pliers on top of that bead, and then just bend it over the top, the wire over the top of the plier. Then turn your wrist, turning the plier vertically into the bend, and then go over the top of the plier with your wire. As you go over, go under the plier and turn your wrist forward. This is what you should have. Now, this is a little off center, so I can put it back in there and move it over on that side a little bit, like this. Then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers. I'm going to hold on to this loop. And you can do these head pins are soft enough, you can do it with your fingers if you want. But just start to turn the wire nice and neatly and tightly around like this. And that's what you should have. Just cut this down. Oops. And then squeeze that little extra piece down. There we go. Now I'm going to use a head pin. So what I'm going to do, an eye pin. Jeez, I can't get those straight. I'm going to open the eye pin first because it's easier when you don't have beads on it. Open it up just like you would open up a jump ring. Slide this on here and then close it. Then I'm going to take two tiny rondelles and I'm going to put them on my eye pin, just like this. Oops, maybe, I don't know. There we go. Now I'm just going to make a loop with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this eye pin right over the top of these beads, just like this. And then I am going to cut it down to about 1/4 of an inch. I want this to be a really small, you turn it this way, a really small loop. So I'm just going to, maybe even smaller than 1/4 of an inch, just like that. Then I'm going to grab the tips of my round nose pliers, go to the very end of that wire we just cut, and I am going to make a small loop. Just turning it over, just like I've shown you a million times. Just turn it until it comes to where you bent that wire, so you have a nice little loop like this. If it's off-centered like mine is, you can always put your plier in, move it over, and then close it again. Just like that. So that is your dangle right there. And this one will go to the outside, and we'll put it on with a little head pin. Alright, a tiny jump ring. Everything's a head pin today. Okay, so now this one, we're just going to make a little wrap loop, or no, this one, that is on the compass. So this one, we're just going to make a tiny little wrap loop like this. So we're just going to use our little head pins. So grab one of your little head pins and straighten it out, and just pick up two little rondelles like this, and then just bend this top over, put your pliers right at the top of the bead and bend the wire over the top. Again, turn your wrist, bring the wire over the top of the plier, turn your wrist forward, and bring that wire underneath the plier, just like that. So you have a little loop that looks like this. My loop is off center again. So I'm just going to move it back a little bit, like that. So let me get you a little closer, because I know I'm kind of far away, but when I'm working with wire, I get out of frame real easy. So like this, I'm going to switch hands. I'm going to hold the loop with my chain nose pliers. And I'm going to grab my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to start turning this extra wire around the wire that the beads are on. And I'm going to, since I did it with the other one, I'm going to keep wrapping kind of over the top of the beads and kind of form a bead cap with the wire here. Just like that. So I've just kind of gone over the top of the beads a little bit. And I'm going to cut this off really close. And then I'm going to tuck that in. Careful, because you'll break your rondelle. Be really careful. Okay. Now, unjumble my mess here. Get a couple little tiny jump rings out. So I have these little tiny ones like this. Let me see if I need another one. Ouch. No, I have one. Those are the ones I want. Yeah, I think those are the ones I want. Maybe. Let me compare them with these here. Just making sure I have the right thing. Yeah, they're fine. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of these. And open it. And I'm going to put this one on that jump ring and then into the loop closest to the center, and then I'm going to close it. Straighten everything back out. Then I'm going to grab this one and get another jump ring. Let me back off a little because I'm probably out of camera. I'm not really paying attention to that. I'm sorry. But I just want to do this. I just want to do this. And then I'm going to put this one on this dangle if it doesn't run away. And then I am going to put it on the end one and close it. Okay. Whoa. Now, you can get as fancy, you can make as long dangles as you want, you can do whatever you want. You can put a couple dangles on this big jump ring on top if you want, whatever you want to do. But, you can make this as a pendant if you want it to be a pendant. I'm just really not into wearing a compass. Some people might be, I don't know. No judgment. I just don't want to. So, I've made mine into a keychain. So, this is how I'm going to do this. And you can always, like I said, you can make a couple little dangles and dangle them off at this big jump ring here. That would be kind of cute too. And that is what that looks like. That's kind of cute. So we have made 4 projects now. We've got a bunch of these chandelier components, but quite honestly, I'm just not into chandelier components. We've had so many of them with these boxes that, and there's only, you know, I mean, you can do all different beads and you can make them look all different, but after a while, I just get tired of connecting components to a chandelier. I'd like to have little connectors or something else, or just more beads to weave with or something, but I'm not going to use these today unless I decide to make a quick pair of earrings. And if I do, I'll just loop them and I'll show it to you. But I've still got this set, this set, this set. I've got a little bit of the rondelles left here with all my weird stuff mixed in. I was thinking of doing something red, white, and blue themed. I don't think I'll use those. I think I'll use these. So I really don't like these. I think they're ugly. So... and I really don't like these either. I think they're ugly too. I might make something weird with them just for the heck of it, because someone might like them out there. I mean, just because I don't like them doesn't mean someone else won't. But I don't really like those. So And we've still got these earring components too, so I might do something. But I think I might try to do something red, white, and blue for the 4th of July. I'm not really sure, and I don't even know if you could see what I was doing while I was rambling on. But I'll be back when I decide what I want to do with that stuff. Okay, so I figured out something to do with these big ear wire findings and these weird big white beads. And they're not so bad once you actually doctor them up a little bit. So I've used a couple of bead caps, and I've gotten some out of my own stash because I used all the ones that came in the box. Plus the other ones that came in the box weren't quite the shape to go around these. So I'm using 2 of my bead caps. I'm using 1 of the beads. I'm using 3 rondelles, the wire, and then because of the shape of this wire and the way it works, I'm using a crimp bead. And number 1, beadle-on. You need a very small one for this, and I'll show you why in a minute. But first, I'm going to use the head pin that came in the box, and I'm going to pick up a bead cap, and I'm going to pick up the big white bead and then another bead cap, and I'm just going to make a wrap here. So just like I've been showing you, I'm going to hold, see how big I made that loop. I'm going to hold my plier right up against the bead cap, and I'm just a little ways down because I don't want a huge loop, and I'm just going to bend it over, turn my wrist into the bend, bring this over the top, and as I bring it over the top, I need to bring it under and turn my wrist so that it forms a loop. Just like this. And then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers. I'm going to switch holding it to my left hand. I'm going to bring this wire up parallel to the pliers that I'm holding, and I'm going to start to turn around the wire that's holding the bead. And I'm just going to continue turning until I get it nice and tight. Once it's nice and tight and wrapped well, then I can cut this little tag off, this little tail. And then I can use my chain nose pliers and just tuck that little tail in. And it wants to spin, so just be patient. And then there's that. Now, I am going to, and I hope I was in camera, I may not have been, but we're going to open this wire now. So it just has a little hook in the back, and just open it up and drop on your bead. And then we're just going to slide on the 3 rondelles onto the wire, just like this. And just slide them on. It's somewhere. I'll find it. Never fear. There we go. And then one more. Okay. And then I'm going to get out a little crimp tube because, see, these will not stay. Everything's just kind of moving around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a crimp tube, and this is a number 1 beadle-on, like I said. I'm going to put it on the wire and let it drop down to the rondelles, and then I'm going to squeeze it with my chain nose pliers just straight down, and then that's not going to stay, so I will grab my crimp pliers, and in the second divot I'm going to put this right here, right in the middle of that second divot, and squeeze. And then I'm going to turn it sideways into the first divot on my crimp tool, and I'm going to squeeze. And I'm going to do that one more time. Sometimes they turn out perfect, but when you're on the camera they do not. So I'm going to do this again. Let's see if I got it. And I can just shape it. Well, no. Let's do that one more time. It worked perfectly on this one, but of course, like I said, I am on the camera trying to show you guys stuff, and it has to make me look stupid. So, you know. the way of the world here. All right, I'm going to do this one more time because this does work. I'm going to put the crimp tube on. This time I'm not going to squeeze it first. I'm just going to go into my second divot and I'm going to squeeze it down against the wire. And I'm going to get you close so you can see what I'm doing. So now you can see I put it in the second divot, the one closest to the handle, centered it and squeezed it. And now I'm going to turn that sideways so that the two sides of the crimp tube that's squished out on the sides are in the first divot, and then I'm going to squeeze again. And now it's stable and it's going to stay there and it doesn't look bad. So don't worry about squeezing it first with the chain nose. I did it the first time and it worked, but it's not necessary evidently. So now I can close this and my beads are not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay together well for me. Otherwise, every time you set your earring down or whatever, when you put them on, of course, they're going to hang well because this is going to hang below the earlobe. You're going to connect it together and they would stay fine. But how often do we just have them on something hanging? A lot of times we toss them down and the beads would slide around. So that's what I did to keep that from happening. And that's what that pair looks like. And really, it's not too bad looking for big old weird looking beads. So there we go. It turned out kind of cute. And this would look cute with a white pair of pants or something. They'd be cute. So that's that. Okay, so I'm going to try to do a really simple focal area in the front of a necklace and then maybe connect some chain or something for the back because I know I'm not going to have enough beads to go all the way around, but I'm going to see if I can just make like a front red, white, and blue kind of 4th of July type of theme. I'll probably add some 11/0 seed beads to this. I'm going to do a weaving project. I'm using a size 10 beading needle, and because my nanofill is low and I only have smoke fire line, I'm using this Wildfire. It is a 0.006 inch diameter, and I rarely ever use Wildfire, so you don't have to have this. You can just use an 8-pound, 6-pound fire line or a 10-pound nanofill. That's fine. But I'm going to use this. It's a little stiffer, so because of the size of my beads, it'll probably work out pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting a wingspan on my needle of thread. And then let's rearrange a little bit here. And then I'm going to pick up one of the big white rondelles and 3 of the smaller red rondelles. And I'm going to bring them down to the end of my thread, and I am going to leave a nice long tail, you should leave probably 8 to 12 inches, something like that, so you have a nice long tail. And then I'm going to go back through the first white bead that I put on here. So just take your needle, go through that white bead, and then draw your thread through until the beads wrap around each other like this. Now I'm seeing that this is going to be kind of thready, so I think what I'll do is I'll add an 11/0 seed bead on either side. So let me start again, and yes, I'm designing, I apologize, but sometimes you just have to do this. So I'm going to pick up an 11/0, and then I'm going to pick up the white bead, and then I'm going to pick up an 11/0, and then I'm going to pick up 3 of my beads here. I have to put out some more 11/0s. And I'm just using a Toho 11/0, and I am using nickel plate. It's like this. And I'm going to bring this to the end of the thread and do like I did before, but this time I'm going to go through the seed bead and the white bead and the seed bead. So I will show you. I know you can't see it very well. Get you close. So I'm just coming back through the seed bead, the white bead, and the seed bead, holding onto my tail, holding onto my working thread, and I'm just going to pull until I get something that looks like this. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to sew back through them. So I'm coming out of this 11/0. I'm going to go through these 3 red beads, And now I am back where my thread, my tail thread, and my working thread meet, and I'm going to tie a little knot just to secure it. So I'm just going to tie one overhand knot just like that, just to keep it from moving around too much. Tighten it really tight so it doesn't get in your way, and then go up through the 11-0, the white rondelle and the 11-0. Now we're going to come up into this red bead. We're doing a right angle weave, so you're going to need 4 beads, 4 of the bigger beads in each unit. We're adding the 11-0s just to make sure that we don't have a lot of thread showing. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow this red bead for our next unit. So we're only going to have to pick up 2 red beads, an 11-0, a white bead, and 11-0. We are coming out, our thread is coming out towards the red beads. So on the red bead side, if it was coming out towards the white bead side, we'd pick up a white bead first. But because it's coming towards the red beads, we're going to pick up 2 red beads. So pick up 2 and an 11-0 and a white big rondelle and an 11-0, and then come back in on the opposite side from which you're exiting the bead you're coming out of, just like this, and pull your needle through. And just keep pulling until they come up and wrap around like this. Now we're going to sew through these 3 red beads right here, or 2 red beads. We're coming out of a red bead, and we're just going to pull that tight. Now, if you want to, you can sew all the way around the entire unit again, but this is a pretty thick thread, and I don't feel like I need to, so I'm just going to proceed. Now, if you feel like you need to, if you're using a nano fill or something, just go back all the way around, come back out this red bead. And then we're coming out towards the white beads this time. Instead of our thread coming out towards the red beads, we're coming out towards the white. So we'll pick up an 11-0, a white bead, an 11-0, and 2 red beads. Because you know that whenever you pick up the white bead, you have to have an 11-0 on either side. So that's going to help you know what order to put them in. And then you're going to go back into the red bead on the opposite side you're coming out of, and you're going to pull this down tight. And now you can see it's starting to curve a little bit. So now we are just going to sew into the 11-0 and the white bead. Pull tight as you come out, and then go into the 11-0 and the red bead on top, because you're always going to start your next stitch from a red bead. If you're using different beads than I'm using, then just know that your smaller beads, and to achieve this effect, you will need a bigger bead and smaller bead. So you can use like an 8mm and 6mm rounds if you'd like. You'd still achieve this look. But you need to have smaller beads and a bigger bead on the bottom. Now I'm coming out towards my red beads. So I'm going to pick up 2 red beads, an 11-0, a white bead, and an 11-0, and I'm going to come back through this red bead right here and pull my needle through. I'm just holding on to everything so I don't pull it all out of whack, and then this is what you should have. And then we're just going to sew through these red ones, pull tight. Like I said, if you need to sew all the way around again, if your unit is loose, not working out, not looking tight, go back through it. So now we're going to continue doing this exact stitch until we run out of beads. So I will come back and tell you how many units that is. Okay, so I've gone as far as I can possibly go. I still have some white beads left, but I only have 1 red. So I have gone as far as I can go, and it's 21 units, I believe. So what I'm going to do now is I'm coming out of this end. I've sewn around it to secure it, and I've also found sewing around it again, each unit is better than just going through once. So if you sew around each unit and reinforce it, like I had said earlier, you'll find that your piece is a little neater. Then you're going to have to kind of spread it out because it wants to kind of bunch up a little bit. So spread it out nicely. And then cut 2 pieces of chain. I want to make an 18-inch necklace, so with this, I've cut 5 inches of chain, and I've put a toggle on the end with small jump rings. So I used like a 4mm jump ring, or 3mm, I believe, jump ring. I put on my own clasp because I used all the ones that came in the box. And this is ready for me to sew onto my piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get one side ready. And I actually think I cut a little bit more than 5 inches, so my necklace is probably going to be a little bit longer. I can always shorten it by cutting my chain and moving my toggle, so it's not a big deal. Make sure that you have your chain. I cut my chain, so I'm not afraid that this one is open, but make sure that if you opened and closed your links to remove your chain, that your link is closed tightly. I'm coming out of this 11-0 seed bead after sewing through. I went through the white bead and then the 11-0, and now I'm going to go through my chain, just the very last link, go through one of those chains, get you closer, and then I'm going to pick up an 11-0, and I am going to sew through this red bead. So I'm coming out of the 11-0, I'm going to sew through this red bead right here and pull this down. Now you can see you have a nice little connection for your chain. So I'm going to sew all the way around this unit one more time so that I can secure it, and then I'll probably sew all the way around it one more time. So let's go ahead and make sure that it's nice and secure and sew all the way around. Because this video is getting very long, I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. I'm just going to continue sewing around. I'll go through my 11-0, my chain, my 11-0, and sew around again. And when I am done, I will make sure that I go all the way around, and I will exit this red bead and come back. Okay, I have secured my chain by sewing through it a couple of times. Now I'm coming out of this red bead like I told you. Now I want to get on the very top bead, the one that's center on the white bead right here in the red, and we're going to try to slide a rondelle in between each unit as we come through the top bead. So we'll go from this top bead to this top bead to this top bead. So I'm going to pick up a rondelle. Now this side is a little squishy because on the ends it is a little squishy simply because it's trying to curve. So I'm going to go into, I've got a rondelle, I'm going to go into this bead right here. And I'm going to pull this in, see how well it'll fit. Yep, I can pop it right down in there. So this will be my blue element that I'm going to put in here. Now, I might have been better off, even though I was using some white beads, using a darker thread against this blue and this red, but that's all right. We're just doing it for the sake of the design here. So I'm just going to continue, and since I have decided to sew through all the way back, really didn't need to retain a long tail over here, but if you did, you can still use it if you'd like. But I may just sew it back in and use my long thread because I extended on my working thread and put on my clasping. Sometimes I plan for it just in case I don't go back through, and I planned for it, but I don't need it. So I'm just going to continue. Excuse me, the voice is going away. I've been talking way too much, which, you know, someone will tell me I'm talking too much anyway, but, you know, it confirms it. All right, so now we're going into the next one here. So I am developing an issue as I'm doing this embellishment, so I'm going to change it a little bit. On this end, my embellishment is really tight. The rondelle fits perfect. It's really tight. It's good. But as I go across, I need a little bit more room between each unit to keep this spread out like an actual focal that will cover the entire front of the throat. So what I'm going to have to do is, I think an 11-0 on either side is going to be too much. 2 rondelles is going to be too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. and just the rondelles, and then I'm going to do a 15-0 rondelle 15-0 and see if I can get that all the way across. Now you can do your 15-0 in white or red or blue. I think I'm going to see if I have some 15-0s in this nickel plate. If not, then I will just use some other color. Okay, so I found some 15-0s in nickel plate. So I'm just going to slide through here and then I'll show you. So I've gone 4 of my single rondelles, and of course you can always just add a bigger bead in the middle too. Here, get something out of your stash that's a little bigger and fits in there nice, and then go back down to the rondelles too. Maybe you have a bigger blue rondelle that you can put in there. That would work much better than what I'm trying to do, but see if we can solve this issue. So yeah, that's going to work. So what I'm going to do, and it's going to be threadier underneath now, but we could always come back through with 15-0 seed beads if you really wanted to get picky about it, but I'm really not too picky about this right now. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0, a rondelle, and a 15-0, and I'm going to slide into the next bead. And I'm going to do this all the way across until I get to my last 4 units, and then I'll just slide in a single rondelle on the last 4, and we'll be back. Okay, so now you can see I've put my little 15-0s in there, and you can see what that looks like. What I'm going to do now is I have put my needle on the tail that I left, and I'm just going to sew it around and cut it off so that it's out of the way. So I'm coming out of with my working thread after putting my rondelles in, I'm coming out of this second red bead in. So you just want to come out of that top bead, because you're sliding from top bead to top bead. You'll be exiting that top bead, just stay there. And then put your thread on your tail and just sew it in. So I'm coming out between these 2 beads here. I'm going into the 11-0. I'm going to go into the white bead and the 11-0 and the red bead here. Now you can tie a knot if you want, but we already tied one on the end. So I'm just going to go all the way around. And I'm just going to cut it. And then I can burn it down later and kind of have a little blob there. But I need to go through that bead. So again, I'm just going to cut this down and just leave it short like this. Now I'm going to put my needle back on my longer thread, and I have way too much. I extended a ton, but I'm going to put it back on, and then we're going to put the other side of the chain. So now I have put my thread or my needle back on my thread. I'm going to come up through this last bead here. I'm just going to ignore this little tail guy. I can burn him down after I'm done. So now I'm just going to do the same thing I did on the other side. I am going to go through this 11-0 seed bead. Let's see, how did I do that? Yeah, I went through this 11-0 seed bead, or actually, I picked up an 11-0 on this side, on the red side. So let's pick up an 11-0, and then let's pick up the chain. Go through the last link of the chain. Drop it down. And then go into the 11-0 here, right in front of the white bead. So let me see if I can get in camera here so you can actually see what I'm doing. So I just picked up an 11-0 on this side and my clasp, and then came through this 11-0. And I'm going to pull this down so you can see, and I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this tail a little bit more. And wildfire doesn't burn down as well as fireline. I'll probably end up cutting that off. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and continue sewing through this. So I'll just go around this entire unit and sew, putting that chain nice and secure in between those 2 11-0 seed beads. Sew around it a couple times, and then I'll sew it through, and I'll come back and I'll show you how to tie off. Okay, so I have sewn through and secured that. Now I've sewn through one more time, or my last time I've sewn through, and I came through, this is just my blob from my tail that I left, and I came through this white bead. Right between this white bead and this 11-0 seed bead, there's a thread bridge. Go under that thread bridge. Arrange your loop so that it is between those two beads, the white bead and the 11-0. Go through the loop and guide your knot down on the thread. And then just go ahead and sew up another time. So I went through, I secured, but now I can go through and I can secure one more time. So I'll have 3 passes of thread. So I'm going to go through here, and like I said, that's just that big old blob from my tail. I'm not used to using wildfire. It does extend, and it does do stuff like Fireline does. It's just bigger and bulkier, and it tangles easier. And I just don't really like it because I'm not used to it. I suppose it's fine, but I'm just not used to it. So we like what we like, you know. I'm going to go through one more time. Maybe get through this 11-0 here. There we go. I'm going to tie my knot again here, and then I'll just sew up around a unit. Get away from it so I can be done. So again, I'm going to guide my knot down between these 2 beads. Just pull it slowly, and you can usually control it pretty well. And then I'm going to go up through this 11-0, and then this time, if I can get to it here, find the hole. It's kind of situated weird. Let's see, where is it? Right there. And then I can go up through this red bead here, and then I can sew over here. You can tie knots on a couple more thread bridges. Don't tie it on the thread bridge between the rondelle, the blue rondelle and the red rondelle, because then you're just going to mess it all up. If you want to tie another knot, tie it like here between the 2 red beads on that thread bridge, or go all the way down and tie it between the 11-0 and the white bead, or the 11-0 and the red bead. But don't tie it up on the top where the embellishment is. Okay, so I've just come all the way around, come through this 11-0 here, and just for the sake of this, I could sew through and make it a lot more secure, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to cut this down, and I'm going to bring this in, see if I get another big old blob. I probably will. This doesn't roll in quite like Fireline. Well, that one did. It's okay. So I'll just have to worry about that little blob. But anyway, let me get all this stuff out of the way, and I'll show you what we just made, and I'm going to call it good for this box. I'm tired of it. I just don't want to make any more. I'm good. So this is what your necklace is going to look like. And I'll show you a prettier layout of all of the necklaces and stuff in a minute. But this is what it looks like. Now, this is probably a little too long. So let me put it on my bead board to measure it. So what you can do after you make your middle portion, you can lay it out on your bead board, and then you can look and see. Yeah, so this is going to be a 20-inch necklace, and I really wanted it to be 18, so it was higher collar length. So I'll probably cut some more of my chain and lower down this chain so that my necklace doesn't lay quite as low on my chest. This is going to look pretty higher up, collar on your collarbone, or right below it, but right in the collarbone area. So I'm going to probably shorten that, and that's how you measure to know how long you want that. Okay, here are the pieces that I've made today. So I still have quite a few things left. I could probably make a little bit more, but I have more of these components. I have a bunch more of these beads. There's some pottery beads I didn't use. Quite a few little things I didn't use, but some more of these little metal spacer beads. But I think that this is a pretty good little load here and should give you some ideas. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.